In this video, we're going to look at a Caro-Kann game from ChessGoals member Birdsell, and this is from the Lichess 45-45 League. Birdsell's playing the black pieces, and we see a Caro-Kann exchange variation. So that's with E takes D, C takes D, and this is straight out of our Caro-Kann course that we have for ChessGoals. There's a link in the description. After bishop to D3, knight C6, C3. Here our course recommends queen C7. The reason for that is it kind of prevents this bishop from easily developing. Can't come to F4, and also the bishop coming to G5 doesn't attack a knight on F6 yet. So queen C7 is our recommended move, just nice and flexible. But here we see knight to F6 by Birdsell, also a perfectly reasonable move. And one nice thing about the Caro-Kann course that we have, it's really not based on memorizing all the moves. We really try to teach you the ideas behind the moves and let you use those positional ideas to outplay your opponents. So we'll see here, even though Birdsell doesn't play the exact move order, he still plays in the spirit of our Caro-Kann course. After queen b3, queen d7, so defending this b pawn, and there's no way that this queen can be attacked currently. There's no knight to e5, for example. After h3, Birdsell retreats the bishop, and the idea here is this is the good bishop for white. It's the bishop on the opposite color of white's pawn chain. This is technically the bad bishop for black because the black pawns are all going to be on light squares the same color as this bishop. So Birdsell is actually preparing this trade of bad bishop for good bishop. Really nice strategic idea. After knight to d2, e6, knight to f3. Here Birdsell has a pretty big decision to make, and I think he chose correctly. So in a lot of these Caro-Kann exchange lines, if you see the queen on b3, it tends to be okay to sacrifice this b7 pawn, allowing queen takes b7. If you know that your king gets to safety and you're able to get one of the rooks quickly to the b file, you can actually get quite a bit of counterplay for the pawn, and usually you get at least a full pawn worth of compensation. Here Birdsell, you'll notice, went from 43 minutes. Oh, I was going to say he spent a lot of time. He spent 6 seconds. Okay. Coming up, he spends a lot of time. I think the reason he played this, though, is because he had an understanding that it was okay to sacrifice this pawn with rook to b8 and castling in the end. So he made the correct decision with bishop to d6. This is the quickest developing move, and he understood that it was okay to give up this pawn. So now after knight to e5 by white, Birdsell sidesteps the queen, queen to c7, and now we see this knight is actually triple attacked and only defended twice. So here white has to start to think, what's the best move? I would expect maybe knight to f3, but then you have to think about, well, what if bishop takes f3? This knight can't come back because bishop takes f4 is going to be played. So here white's already in a position where they're forced to make a decision, and some of the decisions are actually going to give black an advantage. And this is what you want to do to your opponent. So you want to put all of your pieces on good squares, like look at how Birdsell's set up here, and give your opponent chances to make mistakes. And here we see white creates their own mistake by playing pawn to g4, which is an inaccuracy. This is the move that Birdsell spent quite a bit of time on. He went from 43 minutes down to 39 minutes plus the increment. So we're looking at a 4.5 minute move, and he finds knight takes e5. This is a very critical move. So what I really like about this game so far is Birdsell didn't have all the opening moves memorized. He didn't know exactly what move order to play with, but he's got almost a 10-minute time advantage here. He created a situation where his opponent made a mistake with g4, and he just put all of his pieces on natural squares. He kind of understands the plans behind this opening, and now when it comes to a point to use tactics, this is where he starts to use his time and uses the tactics to create an advantage. So he was able to calculate out after knight takes e5, pretty much white has to take, otherwise knight takes d3 check will happen. And after white takes, bishop takes e5. Now, if bishop takes bishop, the queen takes back with check, and that frees time for this bishop on h5 to move. So black is not going to lose any material here, and actually black has won a pawn at this point. So now white plays bishop to b5 check. And now this is a very cool move by Birdsell. He plays king to f8. It's possible that maybe he could have played king to e7. Let's see what the engine thinks. King to d8 is a move, knight to d7. But what I like about king to f8 is he understood that it's okay to move the king towards the rook without castling. Because if you look at the dynamics in the position, all of his pieces are still well placed. The king could always hide later, maybe on g7 or h7 after pushing a pawn. But he knew if he got his king to safety, these tactics are working out in his favor. And this actually encouraged his opponent to blunder on the very next move. So the best move for white is bishop takes bishop, queen takes, and then either play bishop back to e2 or move the king for white. Just accept that you're down a pawn. But his opponent saw king to f8 and thought, I need to attack this king. And now Birdsell bravely plays king to g8. And here black already has a big advantage, because the problem for white is, how do you get out of this? After bishop takes bishop, queen takes, which happens in the game, bishop blocks, bishop to g6. And now the problem for white is this bishop is pinned, the queen's on it, black is already up the one pawn, and the rooks are going to actually come into the game pretty quickly for black, and white's trying to figure out, well, where do I put my king? So black is up one pawn, plus about another pawn and a half worth of material, or positional advantage. So close to a 2.5 pawn advantage. Now here white gets a little bit greedy. Queen takes b7, and I think I understand why. They feel uncomfortable in this position, already down a pawn, probably thinking, let's try to take b7 and keep an eye on sort of these back rank checkmate ideas. Makes a lot of sense. But now this allows Birdsell to get active with the rook. Rook to b8. Ready to come take b2, which is going to be devastating for the white king, which is stuck in the center right now. And this promotes another blunder by white, queen to e7. Now the reason this is a blunder is because this bishop on e2 is currently pinned, and Birdsell finds the correct move again, bishop to d3. I mean, this game by Birdsell, I just really love it. He only had 2 inaccuracies the whole game, according to Stockfish. 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, 31 average center pawn loss. And he's playing someone that's a little bit higher rated as well. So after bishop to d3, now we have this queen takes e2 checkmate threat. White decides to castle out of it, and Birdsell wins the piece. Queen takes e2. Now I'm going to go a little bit faster through the rest of the game, but let's just watch how Birdsell converts this. There's really no big mistakes from black's perspective. And white holds on pretty well too, I should note, for the next 10 moves or so. So queen d6, attacking the rook on b8. Rook to f8 by Birdsell, just tucking all these pieces in the corner for now, but he knows that he's already up the piece. He's up a full bishop. Rook a to d1, knight to e4. Now what Birdsell's doing is pretty straightforward. He's going for trades, and he's creating a situation where if white does not accept the trades, this knight might actually end up helping attack the white king. So his opponent makes the trade, queen takes, and now we see rook to e1, so white's trying to get active with both of the rooks. Queen to f3, keeping an eye on this rook, so there's no rook e3, also eyeing this h-pawn. Queen h2, and now g6, getting ready to move the king and free the rooks. Rook to c1, creating this threat. Birdsell spots it. And this is still played, queen f6, queen d6, and bishop to c8. So now for a couple moves here, we're going to see Birdsell regroup. Offers the queen trade, king up, and then pretty soon here he's going to play f6. Yeah, right here, f6. So at this point, now the king is very safe. Queen takes e6 could be played, but that's going to allow Birdsell to play rook e8. And I think that queen is trapped. So setting a little bit of a trap here. And now that everything is safe for black, he's able to start to push ahead, you know, from a position of strength. He's very solid and he can push ahead from here. So after queen d4, queen e7, white snags a pawn, and now this really nice move d4. So Birdsell is looking for traps this whole game. That's another thing I really like about it. He's playing for the initiative, even though he's up a piece and going for trades. He's not doing it in a passive way. He's playing solid, but also looking for these moves that create threats and create traps. And this causes his opponent to make another mistake, king g3, and after queen c7, king h4, there's a mate coming up because the white king cannot retreat. So g5 check is going to be a big threat here. And actually, this is a mate in two. g5, king h5, queen f7 mate. Birdsell missed this mate, but the game's over in just a couple moves. Queen takes d4. The mate is still there. Birdsell wins the rook, offers the queen trade, moves the king back, and here his opponent resigns. But essentially this is already a mate in 7 according to Stockfish, and the game is completely over. White doesn't have any pieces left to attack. So really nice game by Birdsell. I think the main takeaways for black, maybe reviewing this line and looking at this queen c7 idea would be the first one. I think here king f8 could potentially be improved upon, but I kind of liked the style of it in the end. And otherwise, I think the game was just really smooth. So I would say those would be the only two things, queen c7, and maybe here exploring with the engine, king d8, knight d7. Are they a little bit better than king to f8? But king to f8 still held the advantage for black, and I definitely feel like I'm nitpicking here to find a second takeaway. The positive, so those are the constructive takeaways. The positive takeaways, I think Birdsell did a very good job understanding the opening plans. He did a very good job watching for threats, creating his own threats, and playing for the initiative. I mean, this is just such a positive game. I'm really glad I was able to go over this one. Birdsell's awesome. He's been a ChessGoals member for one of the originals, and he's a VIP member. Yeah, so this was a great game, Birdsell. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to do more of these member games sprinkled in with some of the master game analysis. And a lot of them are going to be based on the ChessGoals opening courses. The links are down in the description, but not all of them. So some of these things we're going to go over will not be from the opening courses. So thanks for watching. Please give the video a like and subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and we'll see you in the next video.